We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
with global pals. It's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater podcast, the podcast where we talk about
Everything Theater. By now you all know that, right? Hi, I'm Benita Zahn.
And I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And we're going to have some fun today because we're talking about an oldie goldie in the Capital Region. Schenectady Light Opera Company celebrating 100 years. And to help us do that is Heather-Liz Meglino. She is the Centennial Season Chair and a former board member and someone who's trod the boards there many times. Hey, Heather-Liz, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
100 years, 100 years. Now, it hasn't been 100 straight through because during World War II, I think it was, yes?
Yep, we had to take a brief pause in World War II. And then when we came back, pardon me, we actually had a rule where new women couldn't join the company unless they brought a guy along because we needed them so badly, especially sopranos back in the day. So there was actually a period where you had to bring a guy along if you wanted to join. Luckily now we don't have that problem. Everybody is welcome to come without bringing a friend.
In some ways, though, that hasn't changed. It's still a challenge. You know, there are still so many more, community-wise, more women than men. The company started with concerts and short operettas.
Yeah.
And then moved into Gilbert and Sullivan.
We started as the Bellevue Young People's Chorus in 1926. And like you said, started with like choral performances and operettas, and then with first staging Gilbert and Sullivan. And then it grew. And as, you know, the golden age of Broadway with, you know, Rodgers and Hammerstein and all of that came along, they just picked up and were doing the same kind of shows as soon as they became available.
And you've also had a couple of homes. I mean, now you've got a great location. You're very close to Proctor's. You've got parking. You can walk to the restaurants. But when you started, I found this interesting. You had to petition the state Supreme Court to allow membership corporation to own property.
Well, you just told me something I didn't know.
They started at Mount Pleasant, and then they took over the old Craig School on Balltown Road, which was renamed the Opera House. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, and then we've worked out of, you know, found locations. We did some shows at Proctor's over the years. We did shows at Niskayuna High School. Then we had a longtime residence on State Street, up State Street a little bit further from where we currently are. And we were there when I first did my very first show at the company back in 2004. And that's where I went to see shows as a kid when I first learned about SLOC. And then we moved to our theater now on Franklin Street. And we're actually looking in our 100th year. We got a wonderful grant from the New York State Assembly for $2.5 million to actually make our stage and performance space ADA compliant, because right now actors who need mobility devices can't get on our stage, even from backstage. There's no way. There's too many levels. There's stairs everywhere. So we're embarking in our 100th season to raise additional funds to make the entire theater completely ADA compliant, make more room backstage, open up our lobby space so that we can accommodate more bathrooms and shorten intermission, because as the ladies, we all know that's always a problem. But just open the space up and make it more accessible, uncramp our concession area. But the big thing is the backstage, making sure that can allow actors of any ability to join us, because we've had some talented folks that have come in that we can't cast because we physically can't get them onto the stage, and that's a shame.
You know, Ellen, have you ever performed at SLOC?
I have, in one of the very, very rare straight plays they've done. I don't know if it was the only straight play SLOC's done, but we did the complete works of William Shakespeare, Bridge.
That's the new place. Yeah.
And she was fantastic.
Right, because that's right. You always are. The reason I ask is, having performed there, I have two amusing stories that probably anyone who's performed there. One, to get to the other side from stage right to stage left or whatever, you often had to go outside and run around the theater.
I made that trek in the snow in one performance where our stage manager had to literally shovel me a path because I had to pop up in the pit, which is on the other side, and there's no access through the backstage. Had to go outside. So in the snowstorm, he was shoveling a path for me so I could make it around and get upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We did it in the rain, and I laughed because they were still there and probably on State Street for another few years, but it was a how you say, rough neighborhood. It was an interesting neighborhood. It was
yes.
And we were doing, oh, it's a long time ago, we were doing Sweet Charity. So we were dance hall hostesses, but kind of real dance hall hostess types were populating the street nearby.
Yep.
We went indoors. Didn't want to confuse the buying public, as it were. I mean, it was a very interesting place to perform.
It was. I remember in 2004, like I said, that was my first show, which was Jekyll and Hyde that season, which also happens to be our season opener for our 100th. We were rehearsing, and I think we were actually filming for the records for the company, that dress rehearsal. And we were doing the opening number of Act Two, Murder, Murder. And I remember being on stage and seeing a couple of cops come into the old theater because somebody had been shot right outside. And they thought they had seen like somebody matching a similar physical description, wearing the same clothes, walk into the theater. It turned out it was the video tech that was just, coming in and out of the theater and happened to be wearing this similar outfit. But yeah, I'm glad we've moved closer to downtown. It's a little bit safer and much more welcoming to our folks, and we're much happier there.
Talk to me about the transition then, starting as a place. And if you're local, everyone calls it SLOC.
Mm-hmm.
People may not even realize it stands for Schenectady Light Opera Company.
Yep.
So talk about the relation of opera to musical theater and how that transition happened, if there's ever any talk of renaming SLOC because of the word opera in there.
Mm-hmm. So I think like we talked about the Gilbert and Sullivan being like the first real like stage performances, and those were operettas or light operas. And so that's kind of where the name came from and the history of that. And as time's gone on, I mean, musical theater is related to opera, whether or not, the people that practice both want to admit it. They're intertwined. And especially now as we move into the 80s and 90s, where or even the 70s too, like rock operas started to become a hugely popular genre in musical theater. It's never really gone away, that interrelation. Now we tend to call ourselves SLOC Musical Theater so that we can keep the Schenectady Light Opera, which is our legal name. But because everybody knows us by that shorthand, it's kind of transitioned over the years, and everything we have on it now says SLOC Musical Theater. So that's kind of how that transition has gone along over the years, but you can't really take it out. It really is intertwined, and it's never going to go away. I mean, you don't get musical theater without the history of opera, and the influences are seen on each other to this day.
I know we had a wonderful guest quite a while ago, Kelly Gliptis, who I grew up with, and she is an opera performer, but her roots are musical theater. That's what we did growing up. And I know that she posts all the time about going into auditions and people saying, oh, you're too musical theater for opera, or you're too opera for musical theater. And she's like, no, they're the same
They
family.
go together.
They do.
I mean, I was classically trained as a vocalist. I've been singing since I was, born. And I went to a teacher specifically who taught classical music because that training was so important and that technique was so important. And I find that because of that, I have better vocal endurance and I can keep up with shows, and have learned to translate that to a variety of different sounds, but in a healthy manner. Because especially with like rock operas and things like that, people tend to push their vocal cords beyond what they should be doing, and it's not healthy and it's not sustainable, even for a short, 7 or 8 show run like we do at SLOC, but it still can hurt them after a while. And so I personally love the fact that I had classical training and was taught that so that I can then translate it into my musical theater work. And I'll be the first to admit, you weren't going to see me auditioning for American Idiot because that's not my vocal strength. But I still have learned how to take it into a more modern musical theater sound and things like that, but still can go and pick up an aria and go do that if needed.
Yeah. And I find it fascinating that I don't know what was going on in the late 20s, but we've got you guys celebrating your 100th season. We have Proctor's celebrating their 100th season, and Schenectady Civic Players doing their 99th season. So it was like the hotspot of theater back in the day. Have you guys had any conversations about the other theaters that are around the corner from you about all celebrating these anniversaries?
It's come up. People have asked us. We are in talks of doing, so we're going to have our gala. We're going to do a 100th celebration. And right now we are looking to do our gala actually at the GE Theater at Proctor's. in April of 2027 as part of our 100th season. So we are we're working with them as a great partner because we can't fit the size audience we want in our space, and we want to open it up to more folks. So that's why we've shifted over to Proctor's to do our gala. But it's I think because we have a lot of stuff in common, but we also have such rich separate histories that we're really trying to engage our folks. And honestly, I think it's wonderful. Like, celebrate Proctor, celebrate SLOC, and celebrate Schenectady Civic. Like, these are all, the fact that these organizations have stood the test of time and have lasted a century is absolutely incredible, especially considering what the arts have to go through for funding, and especially right now with gutting the NEA and things like that. The fact that we still exist, and I think especially for SLOC being an all volunteer organization, the fact that we have managed to exist this whole time is just a testament to the love of the arts that is in our community, the power of the arts, and the importance it is to the capital region as just a culture center in downtown Schenectady.
Liz, to that end, as you all craft a new season, how much, if any, do you take into account what the other guys are doing?
A lot. It's hard because sometimes we don't know what's going on. When it comes to the community theaters, we have it a little bit easier because there aren't as many that focus specifically on musicals like we do. So it's a little bit easier in that respect, but we definitely, we know folks that work in the other theaters and maybe try to get an idea, like, do you know if this is coming? And in fact, I'm not going to say what show, but there was thought that we heard a rumor that a certain show might be done at another theater this year. So we specifically shied away from it. It ended up not being done, which is a bummer because I think it would have been a great show for our season, but I'm sure it will be on our stage in the near future. But, we do try to see if we can feel that out. This year, we were also moving quickly. We wanted to know early so that we could plan. We did a season reveal event back in February. And we still have one show still to announce that we can't even announce until July for our rights, which will be our January 2027 show.
But you folks did Hedwig and the Angry Inch, didn't you, a season or two ago?
No, not in recent history.
Okay, I
we
thought
have
you
not
had,
done
because
it.
Albany Civic is doing it now. And Albany Civic's not known for doing musicals.
Yeah, I think I've only seen one musical there since I moved back to the Capital Region in 2012, and I think that was Eight Misbehavin', which was great.
Yeah, I can't remember, and I spent a lot of time on that stage and directing there. I can't remember a musical.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if at any point when you craft a season, if you saw how it went over at another community house and some time has elapsed. If you figure, they did really well, but you bring in a different audience. Yes, there's crossover, but you know how the Capital Region is. That side of the town I'm not going to, do you look at that too?
We absolutely do. And I know, for example, one show that was talked about because we've been trying to do it for years and the rights just haven't been available was Chicago. And we were like, oh, that'd be great. But we realized, well, Colonial Little Theater just did that, even though it's a little bit further out there. But then Steamer 10 is going to be doing it next weekend. I think it opens. And when we looked at the fact that it's Greg Marsh directing and choreographing, we kind of went, and we're not going to touch that, because if somebody's going to do it well and do it perfectly, it's going to be Greg. So we're like, oh yeah, let's steer clear from that. So yeah, that absolutely does go into our season selection.
And obviously lots goes into putting a season together. As we all know, sometimes it is a very big challenge to find things that match. And then do we get the rights? Do we not get the rights? And we have to rethink and compare things. So I imagine putting together the 100th season was a mammoth task. So talk us through kind of your thought process of how was it different for the 100th season?
So the biggest difference was we picked the shows first and then the directors. So what we did was we kind of had a list of shows, and it was a long list that was started with artistic director Michael Camello, and I sat down and we went through a list that probably had somewhere between 50 and 100 shows. And we thought about, where do these fit well in a season? And then we assembled a committee, and our committee was absolutely fantastic. Oh, great. We had designers, music directors, actors, directors, choreographers, like a nice mix of kind of everybody that should have a thought and a say in what goes on to make a great production. And then we asked directors to submit and just said, why do you want to work here on our 100th, and what's your dream show? Not saying that that's what you'd be directing, but what's your dream show? So we got great responses. I think we had almost 30 applicants, which is like the biggest we've ever gotten. And they were great applications. Weeding it down to the final 5 that we chose was really difficult. And some of that ended up being based on the shows that we picked. We had great directors that we have worked with in the past that submitted that just the shows we chose, they would not have been the right directors for. And I know that's hard. Like, theater, we're used to rejection. It's tough. It's hard to hear it, but it really was the case. And as we put the season together, we looked at, okay, who are the directors we have? What are the shows we're looking at? And how do we have a season that has something for everyone and celebrates shows that we've done in the past, composers that we love, but also modern musical theater and things that we love that are new. And I think with all 5 shows that we picked, including the one that I can't announce yet, we really have done that. And we also did a huge call out on social media in advance to folks to say, what do you want to see in our 100th? And we absolutely took that into consideration, because we thought, well, if these are the things that folks want to see, why don't we give them what they want? This is the whole point. They're our audience. We should, let them see the shows that they're really looking for. And even with just the audition notices going out now for our first 2 shows, Jekyll and Hyde just posted their audition notice this week. And our youth show, Hunchback of Notre Dame, has posted as well. The feedback that we've been getting is incredible. So I think, I feel good about the work our committee did. And we really picked a season that does attract a bunch of different folks and puts on shows that people want to do and want to see.
And the other shows that you can announce?
So like I said, Jekyll and Hyde for September, Hunchback of Notre Dame, our youth show in November, our mystery show in January. Then March, we're doing Company. And for those that are wondering, you can't get the rights to the gender bent one yet. So it will be male Bobby and all of that. And then we're closing out the season with Something Rotten, which I'm super excited about. I think that one, I'm glad I told my husband he can audition for that one. I will stay home for that. But I think that's going to be a bloodbath, but in the best way possible. So Molly will have her pick of the talent in the Capital Region. I'm really excited to see how that turns out.
That's awesome. What are some of your favorite memories of being, because you've been on the board for a while now over there and have worked
4
there for
years.
a while.
Yeah. So like I said, I started going to shows at SLOC before I could even make it through intermission on a Sunday matinee. My mother had a friend who did a lot of shows there. And so she would take me, gosh, I want to say starting when I was like 5 or 6, we'd go to the Sunday matinees, and by intermission, I'd need to go home and take a nap. So I think How to Succeed in Business was one of the first shows I saw there back in the 90s. And it grew. I auditioned, was not cast for the first show I auditioned for, but I auditioned for Jane Eyre back in 2003. And that was like my first time getting to experience that side of it. And was cast in my first show the following year in 2004 in Jekyll and Hyde. And I was the dance captain, which cracks me up because my dance partner was Richard Gatta, who's now a Broadway dance captain, but he was doing another show at the time. So I was the one teaching him the choreography after he was at a different rehearsal. But it was a great experience. I went away to college and grad school. And then when I moved back to the area, I had done a show at Not So Common, and one of my castmates was like, yeah, I'm going to go audition for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels at SLOC. You should come. And I was like, I really don't know the show. I know nothing about it. And so I listened to the music and I went, okay, yeah, sure, I'll go. Ended up getting cast as Christine, who is the female lead in the show. And it was so much fun. I had a great experience. And I just came back for show after show after show, and I've lost count as to how many I've done there over the years. And then pre-COVID, I always was like, I don't want to be on the board. This is my fun thing. This is where I go to like blow off steam and express my artistic side. And when, after COVID and wanting to make sure that the company stayed going, it finally got to a point where I said, I think it's time for me to put my money where my mouth is and actually do the work. I've worked for a nonprofit in my day life. And so that mentality of knowing how a nonprofit runs and what we need to do to make money and keep the organization going, I finally decided, I was like, I think I have to offer up what expertise I have. And so I've been doing that for the last 4 years. And it's not easy. I think anybody who's ever been on the board of any kind of organization, and I know you both have, it's not easy, especially when it's a working board. Like at SLOC, we don't have paid staff. So our board and leadership are the ones keeping the place running, and also the volunteers that help out in their spare time. And we appreciate every single person that lends a hand and works for the organization, but it's not easy to keep it running. But I met my husband there.
Oh,
So
tell that
like,
story.
yeah, I met my husband at SLOC. It was during we were doing curtains in, I want to say, 2018. Yeah, 2018, doing curtains. I'd actually seen my now husband John, in How to Succeed in Business, which was his first SLOC show. And I knew his sisters. His sister, Christine Meglino, is a well-known entity at SLOC. She's been, Elle Woods and Legally Blonde. She's done a bunch of other great roles there. And she was Rosemary in How to Succeed. So I went to go see, friends. And I remember thinking, oh, I didn't know there was a brother. Like, I had no idea that the Meglino sisters had a brother. And then, months later, mutually met with friends, never saw each other. But then we started doing curtains together at SLOC, and got to know each other. And we were actually both seeing other people at the time. And then those fizzled out. And ever since then, we've been together. And after he was in the production of 1776 that I directed at SLOC, and then in 2019. And then that summer, 4th of July, we went to Philadelphia because I'd never been before. And he ended up proposing outside of Independence Hall. So there's a nice little SLOC story there. And I was actually pregnant with my daughter in the last show I did at SLOC, when we did Merrily We Roll Along. And God bless Carol Brown, our costume designer, for doing everything she could to hide my belly. I was definitely starting to show through by the end of that run. And she did a wonderful job. She used to go to the audience and say, "Can you tell who's pregnant in the show? There's 2 women who are pregnant. One of them you're going to be able to find, and the other one you're not." So,
Besides that as a challenge
yes.
for theater community, otherwise, what challenges are you all facing as you're looking down the road?
Resources. I think resources across the board, and that's human and financial. One of the things that people celebrate in our community is that we have so many theater organizations. And I look at that as both a blessing and a curse. And in some ways, it's an unpopular opinion, but I think what's happened is, we have so many people that are passionate, and that is an amazing, amazing thing to have. But because theater companies have popped up all over the place, the resources are starting to stretch, especially on the technical side. And that was one of the things that pushed SLOC to have to go to, we give stipends now for the directors, producers, choreographers, designers, and folks, unfortunately not the actors, which is something that I personally was not happy about. But it's because it's another theater is willing to pay your sound technicians or your sound designer, and you're not, and you're running at the same time. You can't exactly blame them for going to the place where they're going to make a little bit more money, especially in this economy. So that human resource has been a big thing, but then that leads to the financial, where now we've had to dig into our budgets to say, okay, let's make room. And luckily we are, knock on wood, in a position where we can pay those stipends, but it's, other things are costing more, putting up our sets, like the price of everything has gone up, as we all know when we go to the grocery store. So trying to keep the lights on and keep the production qualities to the visual quality that is matching the talent that's on that stage is a challenge financially. And also, again, because we're all volunteer, finding the folks that have the time to help make sure that the building is maintained, or making sure that, pardon me, that contractors coming in, do we have somebody that can meet them and let them in the building? It's the little things like that that keep the larger organization running that become challenging. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we're facing, is just resources across the board.
Yeah.
So if anybody's got the time, the inclination, and the heart for it,
Mm-hmm.
give them a holler. Give
Yes.
whatever local theater nearby. And I think a lot of people think, well, I can't, or I'm not talented. And it's not about that. It's about showing up, and maybe you're the person who shows you usher,
Yeah.
because that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're the person at the concession, and maybe you're really pretty darn good with a hammer and a
Mm-hmm.
saw. So
And build
don't
a
worry
set.
about putting on makeup. Show up.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're good
Yeah.
with makeup and you're the one who does that. The point is, you don't have to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a star to be a
Hmm.
star
Yes.
for a
I mean,
community house.
even something as simple as I was at the theater on Saturday, we had walked over to go see The Outsiders at Proctor's, and there were volunteers out cleaning or gardening. That's a huge thing is the landscaping because we have a campus. So there's stuff that has to get taken care of there. Has nothing to do with theater itself, but it's a talent or a skill or some for some people a relaxing endeavor to go and garden and keep up
Right.
landscaping. Those kinds of things matter to us as well.
Do you get free tickets if you do help out?
Ushers get to see the shows for free. Otherwise, we don't, I will say this, SLOC does not do a lot of comps, simply because we have the demand for the tickets. So we generally don't, there's a couple of production comps for each show that's at the discretion of the production team to distribute, but we don't, like, the actors don't get comps or anything like that because we sell.
It's important to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actors,
Mhm.
people ask all the time.
Hmm.
So that's a good reason to go usher.
Yep.
I have to shout out to you guys. I will put it here publicly. Best programs in the area. With so many people cutting cost and like cutting their program and hearing how upset people are. Like at Cap Rep, they got rid of them for a hot second and then Maggie brought them back and the excitement of the audience of like having a physical program. And you guys do such a beautiful big program over there.
Well, I have to say, first of all, I have to thank Tom De La Sala made a donation to keep our programs physical because he was very much, he did not like the QR code programs or little flyers that were happening. And he's like, I like having a physical program. I want to hold it in my hand. And so he made a generous donation and has made it the last 2 seasons to help cover the costs that are ads between program ads and the rising costs of printing that have helped that. So big thank you to him, to Tom De La Salle, for making that happen for us. But also, yeah, I'll shout out my husband on this one. He's our graphic designer. So the covers of those programs are his. And between him and Jeffrey Hawking, who's our audience services director, also known as the mayor of musical theater in our area, the two of them collaborate together to create our program. And it's a labor of love, but I appreciate that you noticed. Thank you.
And it's those little things, and it's also part of knowing your audience, because the audience predominantly is still 50 plus for theater, and a lot of 50 plus, and I don't mean to be casting aspersions, but it is a different level of comfort when it comes to computers and your cell phones. And my husband, God love him, he's going to go, oh, you're busting me again. He'll tell you he's not computer savvy. He hates a QR code. And I'm like, oh, give me that. But that's also, again, it's knowing your audience and serving them. And even if it's not, I'm going to go to SLOC because they've got a physical program, it becomes part of I really like going there. And that I like going there, that ephemeral is very important. To your point, get more bathrooms, improve the concession area. Nobody wants to go to theater and have to fight for their comfort.
Right. And that's a big thing for us. I think we've replaced the chairs at least twice since I've been back, trying to make sure that people are comfortable in their seats. And, we want our campus to be welcoming, which is why we've also joined up. Like, I know when you go to Proctor's, you see the Schenectady ambassadors out there. We're utilizing them as well now at our productions to try to make sure that our theater feels safe and welcoming and warm to folks as they come in. Because we want our community to feel good when they walk in our doors, whether it's as an actor or a designer or an audience member or an usher. No matter what you're doing with our organization, we want you to feel safe, welcome, and have a good experience.
There are a number of equity performers in this town, and usually community theater becomes a door that doesn't open to them. Where are you guys when it comes to that?
We don't utilize equity contracts, even showcase ones. I know that there are some equity actors who have, because we don't pay anybody, have kind of just said, like, let me quietly do 1 or 2 shows, but it's been a long time since we've had somebody do that. just because I understand, you've joined a union, and I don't even know if they still do this now that they've opened membership up, but I got my equity membership candidate, my first set of points back doing Gypsy at Cap Rec with you, Benita. And, but I never officially joined the union because for me, I wasn't making a living professionally doing that. And I found my joy in the community theater setting and said, that's fine. But if I ever did take that point in life where I wanted to get paid, I don't know that I personally would go back to doing a community theater production simply for that reason. That if I'm a professional and I'm a union member, I should be upholding my union standards. So we don't tend to we do have a deal with the musicians union. I will say that we are pit members. Some of them are local union members. We do pay our pit. They are not necessarily paid at union rates, but there's an understanding that we are a community theater. So there's kind of an exception, but we do have some members of the union who will say, I can only do this many rehearsals because of the time it gets and union contracts. And we're respectful of that. And our music directors work around things like that. But other than that, we tend not to work union wise.
And I ask because Park Playhouse Stage Company will take two.
Yep.
If you can write two contracts without having to then now add an equity stage manager. There's all the rules and regs, so they will write two contracts.
Yeah.
It's a different world.
Yeah. And it's a different setup for your rehearsals and everything. So we tend to keep it on the community level and keep it at the volunteer level. So that also too, I know for me, like I talked about when we did the stipends and things like that for the creative team, I would worry that if there were suddenly some actors who were getting paid and others that weren't, that might cause some rifts within cast, and it is meant to be community. So I personally think that it's probably best that we don't do that. There might be others who disagree with me, but that's just my personal opinion.
Hey, we've got about 5 minutes left. Should we do a close-up with Heather-Liz?
Oh, let's.
We haven't done one in a while. So sometimes at the end of an episode, we just like to do a little quick-fire Q&A with you of just things to get to know you a little bit better.
All right, let's do it.
So Heather-Liz, are you ready for your close-up?
That's also a dream role of mine down the road. I'm a little young still, but can't wait.
So, what was the moment in your life where you just knew I have to do theater?
Oh my gosh. My parents took me to see, no, I was going to say I did my first show before I even saw, I think, my first show. I was 5 years old. I was cast in The Sound of Music at Doane Stewart High School as Gretel. And I just had so much fun. And it was, it didn't occur to me this was like a thing that you did. I was just like, oh, I watch The Sound of Music all the time. And now I'm getting to pretend to be in The Sound of Music. Like, I don't think it occurred to me. But then years later, my parents took me to see Phantom on Broadway when I was about maybe 7. And I sat on the edge of my seat. My parents like, we paid for a whole seat. You used about this much of it. And I was just in awe. And from then on, it was just everything. Everything was theater.
Do you have hopes that your daughter will do theater?
Oh, she's already singing Wicked, Sound of Music, Waitress, and Hadestown at the top of her lungs at all times. She's a little performer. She dances. It's great. I hope we can get the rights to do Waitress at some point soon because she's be the cutest little Lulu at the end. So there's my hope.
What's a show that has impacted your life greatly, whether one that you worked on or just one that you love?
Cabaret. I saw the 98 revival in the early 2000s with actually Neil Patrick Harris was the MC when I saw it, and he was fantastic. And I just remember thinking that it had pushed the bounds of what I had thought Broadway theater was and theater in general, of that proscenium and the separation, just because I don't know if either of you saw that production, but like you went to the bathroom and like the glass on the mirror had haze on it to make it look like people had been smoking in there. And there was just a layer of smoke over it. They wouldn't give you your playbill until after the show was over so that you were really truly immersed in it. And of course, the show itself and all the meaning behind it, it's so deep. And then years later, I've submitted to direct it a few times at SLOC. And then when it was done back, what did we do that? 2017? And it came up and Peter Caracappa directed, and he was like, I know you've always wanted to do this. Would you want to AD? And I said, no. If I'm not directing it, I want to be in it. And between his direction, Greg Marsh's choreography, Dan Gallagher's music direction, just it was such an amazing experience. Number one, because we did that at the same time that there were the riots in Charleston with the Proud Boys. And to have that happening at the same time and to realize like what we're doing and why we're doing this and the importance of this story now, and now even this 9 years later, it's still just as relevant. And it's kind of sad that that story still stays relevant, but I think because it continues to stand the test of time, that's a show that's always just been super important to me.
And one or two dream roles that you have on your bucket list?
Oh, that I've been lucky. I've gotten to play a lot of mine so far. Ava Perón was a big one. I would do that again in a heartbeat. I would love to play Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard as I get a little bit older. Mother in Ragtime is one I haven't gotten to do yet. I've done Ragtime twice and would do it a million times over and over and over again. Those are the two that I haven't gotten to do yet that I think would be the top of the list.
Well, we hope you do.
And Jenna in Waitress. There's another one. Jenna in Waitress.
That's the one I was waiting to hear. Yeah. Heather-Liz Meglino, the Centennial Season Chair for Schenectady Light Opera Company Musical Theater. Jump online, take a look at all the events happening. It's not just the main stage. There's a lot of other community-oriented events, fun things.
Yep.
And
buy
a lot of tickets.
We got our annual SLOC Sings concert coming up on the 20th of June, whatever
20th.
The Saturday, yes, right before Father's Day. It's Broadway big band, so we're taking a bunch of Broadway songs from all over the history of Broadway and turn them into big band style. We have 40 plus guest singers for the performance. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And then on July 7th is when we'll be able to announce our January show. So keep posted for that too.
And we're going to leave everybody hanging right there because the clock's running down on us. Heather-Liz, thanks. Break legs with everything upcoming.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. And for our listeners, real quick, you can go to capdisctheater.org to see everything that SLOC is doing and all the other things in the Capital Region. And if you want to become a Stage Pass member, which SLOC is a member of, you can get points towards seeing all these great shows at SLOC to win raffle tickets to get free theater tickets for next season and maybe even a trip to Broadway. So go check that out at capdisctheater.org. Thank you again, Heather-Liz. And I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And I'm Benita Zahn. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything, everything.